And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Thursday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. It's been a great week here on the podcast. Thank you for being here. Today's episode brought to you by About Golf Simulators. In the backdrop there, the skeet ball is up. We're getting ready for our junior series, which is sold out. It's been awesome getting the kids here in the studio and training them using the simulator there. This was not planned, though. I've got a red shirt on, and you can see the skeet ball, which is a ton of fun. And the felt on the skeet ball is the same. I mean, the exact same shade of red as my shirt. I mean, it's actually kind of weird how close they are. For those joining us on YouTube, we appreciate it. Those listening in on audio as well, the number's been great. Thank you for being here as we continue to grow. And of course, our goal here, not only, we're not even 2 years old, trying to get into the top 5. So leave us a comment, a ranking, all those things make sense. Tell your friends, tell your family. We've got a great lineup coming up next week. I'm working on getting Peter Ginsburg back, one of the top lawyers in this country. He joined me about a month ago and set the stage for the antitrust lawsuit that everyone was anticipating. And he gave us some great insight on what was going to go down. And now that we're into the antitrust lawsuit, and now a second lawsuit has been filed by Patrick Reed, your boy, against Bryson DeChambeau and the Golf Channel for $750 million. $750 million. And if you read the transcripts there in the lawsuit, guess whose name makes it? Mine. Travis Fulton Golf's podcast. That would be the Stripe Show. Brandl's been on the podcast a couple times, and we're in there. So anyway, that's where we are these days. A lot of lawsuits going around. I want to get Peter Ginsburg back to shed some insight on those. Who knows? We'll probably have another one by the time we have them on. So plenty to talk about when it comes to legal matters. And of course, plenty to talk about when it comes to professional golf manners, as well as even in my industry, coaching. If you are on Twitter, you saw the absolute debacle that was pissing match between Scott Fawcett, who owns Decade Golf, and Brad Faxon, which I'm going to get to here momentarily. But I want to start with Patrick Reed. And, today's episode cover a little ground here on Patrick Reed and that lawsuit, and then a little bit about Scott Fawcett and his feud. And then also leading into our guest today is Brandon Matthews, who is out in Boise. He finished 10th in the season-long race on the Korn Ferry Tour. Brandon, I would say, is the longest hitter on the Korn Ferry Tour. He's currently 10th on the Korn Ferry Tour right now in driving distance, but they only measure, I think, 2 or 3 holes. So, and he is filthy long. I mean, like filthy long. Cruising speed, I want to say 127 miles an hour, club head speed, cruising. I think he could carry it 350, 360 every time if he wanted to. We're going to catch up with him and get some updates on his game and also just some perspective. I think it's interesting. We try to get out in front with a lot of these Korn Ferry Tour players. And, one of the things that's coming about here with LIV Golf is this guaranteed money. And, on the PGA Tour, Korn Ferry Tour, obviously, historically, you get out there. If you make the cut, you make money. And if you don't make any money. And I think one of the things that's going to come to the surface here is some guaranteed money. What is the minimum that a player can make on the PGA Tour? What's the minimum that a player can make on the Korn Ferry Tour? I do think we need to move in that direction. I think that's something that needs to happen. A little more security for these players, especially, I would say on the Korn Ferry Tour, these late bloomers, if you will, which I think Brandon Matthews is, 28 years of age, finally making it to the PGA Tour. I think we got to go that way. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of that transpires from the top down. Jay Monahan, who has a lot in his plate clearly with LIV Golf, but I would have to think that's one of the points from the player's perspective. They had the meeting in Delaware. No one really knows what they talked about. I would have to assume that all of the players in that meeting, basically, if you leave this meeting and you do a podcast or an interview and you leak this information, like, you're going to get clipped from all meetings moving forward. I just would have to think that they had to set the tone, and they're like, what we say in here stays in here. And they've done a good job of that to this point. So what's going to happen from that meeting when it comes to the PGA Tour and the direction that they're going to move, obviously, next with this antitrust lawsuit with LIV, and now Patrick Reed chiming in individually with his lawsuit against Brandel Chamblee and the Golf Channel. You know, you look at Patrick Reed, and it's interesting because I've probably over the years have been more supportive to Patrick Reed than most. If you go back to my Instagram page and some of the things, like, I like personalities on the PGA Tour. You know, not if they're not my cup of tea, that's okay. Like, I don't really see myself hanging out with Patrick Reed. He's not, you know, kind of the type of person that I'm probably going to hang out with, but that's okay. Like, you know, my beef with Brooks Koepka, you know, this arrogance and cockiness and, you know, even borderline bullying mentality. It's just not my cup of tea, but that's okay. You know, Bryson's immaturity, it's not my cup of tea, and that's okay. Like, these guys, you know, we are who we are, right? And we're not going to get along with everybody, but I like the variety and the difference in personalities and the storylines. And I've said all along, like, these guys are going to be missed on the PGA Tour, and I think they are missed. I miss Bryson on the PGA Tour. I'll admit I miss Brooks on the PGA Tour. I miss Patrick Reed's antics on the PGA Tour, and there's been a lot of them. There's been a lot of antics, and we need some of these villains to be present. We need these different personalities, these different voices to be present, their storylines, their characters, their personalities. And there's been a lot of antics with Patrick Reed over the years. That's just the reality of the situation. And if I just go through a few of these, and a lot of these are just accusations, right? And it goes back to his time at Georgia. You know, there's plenty of accusation. It's been well documented about him cheating and stealing, you know, at Georgia. It continued to Augusta. And I'm not saying that this is exactly what happened, but this is all of the smoke and the accusations and the things that have come about. His time at Georgia and his time at Augusta State. You know, he turns pro. You go back to, I just wrote a few of these down that I can remember. You know, just like back to like 2014. I think he won a tournament. I think he was ranked just inside the top 50, and he calls himself a top 5 player. He's a top 5 player on the PGA Tour. 2017, 2019, the Hero World Challenge. He's in that fairway bunker there. I mean, it's pretty obvious of what he's doing with the club head and moving the sand. And it certainly looks like he's improving his lie, right? So you've got that situation. The act is like the Farmers Insurance when he wins back in 2021, where he goes up there and he just picks the ball up. Like, who does that? You know, there's just so much smoke when it comes to Patrick Reed and his antics. There's so many words to, you know, just now leaving for the LIV and the interview that he did up in the on stage there with the other players. And I think one of the questions was, you know, what could the PGA Tour different? And Patrick's like, well, they could have listened to the players. You know, they could have listened more to the players, could have listened to me. His antics in the Ryder Cup and with Jordan Spieth and the tweets after he wasn't picked on the most recent one to Steve Stricker's decisions. I mean, it just goes on and on and on with Patrick Reed. And, you know, Reed, I don't know him, but it's like it certainly looks from a distance that he's one of those guys that he behaves a certain way. He acts a certain way. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of controversy that surrounds his behavior. That's the facts, right? And he just deflects it. Like, there's no responsibility in it. It's everybody else's fault. They should have listened to me. They should have picked me. They should have done this. They should have done that. There's no responsibility when it comes to Patrick Reed and his behavior. And that's frustrating. You know, yeah, I do miss Patrick and the antics, but what annoys me is when he just takes zero responsibility for any of it and just deflects it and makes it everybody else's problem. And I've said that many times on here. It's everybody else's problem. I think Brooks falls into that. It's not me. And I think when you have that much smoke and you have that much controversy and you have that many enemies and you have all, like, at some point, you probably need to take a step back and look at yourself. You know, you probably need to take a step back and look at yourself. And I think it's fair to say, I don't think Patrick's probably ever going to do that. Instead, $750 million lawsuit. So we'll see how that goes. The other thing that happened, last week was this Twitter back and forth between Scott Fawcett and Brad Faxon. I bring it up because I've had a lot of people reach out to me about this. And what do you think of this? And I know a lot of teachers listen to my podcasts, in particular, a lot of young teachers. I've DM'd with many of you back and back, and I appreciate you being here. And, the teaching aspect, the teaching industry obviously is very important to me because it's my trade. I mean, it's my trade. That's what I've done my whole life. And I don't do it as much as I used to, but it's an industry that's very important to me. And I've had a lot of back and forth on this. And I've known Scott for, a long time. His program, Decade Golf, is a fantastic program around course management. And he's really been a leader, I think, in bringing that to the forefront and the importance of that. And he's helped amateur golf and he's helped so many professional golfers. But at no point should a teacher ever become a storyline as part of the performance and the achievement of a player. And that's what happened here this last week. Will Zalatoris gets his first win, and Will, of course, has worked with Scott for many years when he was young around course management. In fact, I think Scott has caddied for him for many of his wins as a young player. But now when you look at this with Will, he gets the win, and then now, of course, Will is forced to reach out to Dan Hicks and to reach out to Brad Faxon and put himself and distance himself from Scott. And of course, Scott attacks Dan Hicks, the F word and all this, because of Hicks' comments about Will Zalatoris' putting, and Brad Faxon, of course, they have a little bit of history there between the two, and it got ugly. I mean, it got ugly. F-bomb this, F that. You guys don't know what the F you're talking about. Bah, 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 bah. And he's brought a lot of that down since. And of course, I made a comment on there on Twitter, and I said, look, Scott, put your phone down. And Scott and I exchanged text afterwards on it. And simply what I told him was like, look, man, you're better than this. Like, you should never put yourself in the middle of something that now your player has to defend, especially after a win. And if that's the case, you're the problem. Now, to Scott's credit, he has since apologized, and I think that's important. But the reality is, and I think the message here to a lot of my young teachers is, you should never be the story, right? You should never be the story afterwards. A teacher, a trainer, a club fitter, a sports psychologist, a statistician, all of these team members and PGA Tour players are a very small percent of what's happening with these players. And I think it's important for all of you to realize that, right? These guys are winning not because of you. Now, you may have a small percent of that, but they're hitting the shots, not you, right? And it just drives me nuts when I see coaches put themselves in the middle to this degree. This doesn't happen very often to this degree, but it gets close at times. And you see the flexing and this and that of players. And look, like, there's a way to go about it, right? I think there's a way to leverage that and market that as a coach when you do teach these players. But make no mistake, if you start getting into a banner over a player on Twitter, F this, F that, give me a break. Put your phone down and move on. You're not that important. And on that, we move forward. Brandon Matthews, he is in Idaho right now, getting ready to start the Korn Ferry Tour Finals, because now you have got the top players from the Korn Ferry Tour competing with the bottom half of the PGA Tour, and now they are coming together through this run of tournaments. And now you're going to get some graduates coming from this next round in the Korn Ferry Tour. The regular season, Brandon Matthews finished 10th. He will be getting some starts beginning in September when the season begins at the Fortinet Championship, and we bring him in now from the great state of Idaho, Brandon Matthews. And joining me now from Boise, Idaho. That's right, folks. We are going back to Idaho, getting ready for the next Korn Ferry Tour event. Brandon Matthews, do I understand that it's like it's pretty hot in Boise right now?
Yeah, we got I think this is gonna be the third day in a row over 100. And I was just listening to the radio as I was going to get my coffee this morning, and they were saying it's been like over the last 20 days, it's been setting records almost every day.
Yeah. See, Idaho, like in Boise, and of course I grew up in northern Idaho, Brandon, up by Coeur d'Alene, small town, Kellogg, Pinehurst. It's called the Silver Valley. It's quite the place. And that's where I grew up in northern Idaho, which is up in the mountains. And then Boise is in southern Idaho, and it's like high desert. So it's much hotter in southern Idaho, but I'm curious, like where you're staying right now, does it have an AC unit?
Yeah, we have a couple AC units. They don't seem to be working. Got home every day. It's like 84 in the house. So that's always really enjoyable. I have to wait for the sun to set for it to start to get cool in here. Sometimes you just got to take what you can get, right?
Yeah. Well, this is fun because, we've the Stripe Show podcast, we've been doing this for just under 2 years. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is introducing to my audience kind of the next crop of players that are working their way into the PGA Tour. And you just finished 10th on the Korn Ferry Tour in the top 25. Nice celebration last week. And so congratulations on that. And what does it feel like waking up this morning, next event, knowing your card on the PGA Tour is secured, and you're going to, I would assume, be in Nampa in the middle of September when the season starts over again. So what's this feel like?
It's interesting because, I don't think the majority of people fully understand the different categories of when you get your card, how many tournaments you get in based off of your number, right? So technically I'm not 10th, okay? I'm going into these playoffs at 10th. And during these playoffs, we jockey spots. So, yes, waking up, Monday or waking up, when I actually got a chance to reflect during a week off, that week, waking up every day that week, kind of talking to my fiance, talking to my family, that, those days are like, wow, okay, we actually did this. But, like a day like today, I got a 109 tee time, I think, or 107. And, I got to go play well today.
Right.
I have to go play well this week. I have to go play well next week. I have to go play well in Victoria to make sure that I maintain as high of a position as possible. So 2 through 25 are all in play to move around in any way they possibly can. The guy that finished 25th, okay, Anders Albertson, can go out and win this week and next week and jump up to second. So, it's a very interesting way that it's done. And realistically, I had dinner with Justin Lauer last night. And one of the biggest things that's talked about is and he didn't even bring this up. Someone else did. It's like, hey, Justin Lauer, finished 25th on the list coming out of last year, and he got in 3 events in the fall. How does that work? You just played your ass off for an entire year on one of the highest levels in golf, and you only got 3 starts.
And just to clarify, like to that, so during the regular season, top 25, like that gets you into the PGA Tour, you're going to get some starts for that. Right now, as you go into the playoffs and you have this bottom 75 from the PGA Tour that are now competing with you guys into the Korn Ferry Tour playoffs. If you play well, then you're going to improve your position and get even more starts, right? And that's kind of how it works. And it's interesting, like when you, or I should say, improve your status. It's interesting when you look at how all of this transpired last year. And of course, it was kind of a wraparound with COVID. But it's cool to see how well a lot of these players are doing and are still in it right now in the FedEx Cup playoffs. When it comes to the top 70, you got players obviously like Will Zalatoris, who was on the Korn Ferry Tour. I mean, he's currently first after his win. You got Davis Riley. You got Sahith Theegala. They're 26 and 27. Mito Pereira, Kurt Kitayama, Taylor Pendrith, Alex Smalley. These are all guys that finished just like you in the regular season in the top 25 and are right now still in it in the FedEx Cup. And then you got guys like JJ Spawn and Trey Mullinax, who came down from the PGA Tour to compete in the playoffs, did well, got back onto the PGA Tour, and they're still in it in the top 70. So that just gives you the perspective, right, of the level of play that is happening right now in Boise when you've got 11 of these guys still in the top 70 right now and competing up in Delaware. So best of luck this week in obviously looking to to improve that status as you wrap around and the season starts just like that, as you said, out there in California. Give my audience, Brandon, a little bit about your journey. You're 28. You're from DuPont, Pennsylvania. You went to Temple. You turned pro in 2016, and your journey started mini tours, right? PGA Tour Latin America, onto the Korn Ferry Tour, and now onto the PGA Tour. You've made, not to get too personal here, but you've made $273,678 to this point on the Korn Ferry Tour. You got some endorsements. You've got all these expenses with your caddy, your agent, all these things that go into being a professional golf and a top 10 player in the Korn Ferry Tour. These numbers are, they're public. People can see them. What's life like as a professional golfer, top 10 player, the money you're making? Is it comfortable? Give us some perspective what it's like to be you in your shoes as you wake up this morning and your quality of life.
Yeah. I might be a little bit different. I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania, so my fiance grew up very similar in the way she was raised and the way she kind of looks at financials and stuff like that. So growing up and going throughout our lives, comfortability was for the most part just getting by. So, I'm really, really thrilled at where I'm at. I'm definitely comfortable. I'm happy to do a couple things for, me and her, my dad, just happy to, keep that close-knit circle and, give back a little bit to just in small ways right now. And obviously, hopefully in bigger ways down the road, in ways that, they have obviously given up and sacrificed for me to be where I am today. So it's interesting now with the way golf is heading, with the financials and everything. I think it's heading in the right direction. I think this is the best example that helps people understand where professional golf still is right now. Chris Baker finished 75th on the money list this year, or the points list this year, for the Korn Ferry Tour, I believe. And you can look this up and check me if I'm wrong. I believe he made like $81,000 or $82,000. Okay. So realistically out here, you're somewhere in between $1,000 and $1,500 per week for a caddy fee, depending on what you're paying them. $2,000 would be on the highest end. I don't really know anybody that's paying a caddy $2,000 out here, unless it's in the playoffs right now. Guy coming down from PGA Tour or whatever. Then you have obviously rental car expenses that are going to be, especially with how much rental cars have gone up, anywhere, if you're lucky, $450 for the week, and if you're not, can be up to $1,000. Okay. Hotels, Airbnbs, whatever, you average that out to be about $1,000 a week. And then flights, or however you get to your next place, you can average that out to $500, and that doesn't include food, that doesn't include other expenses that you incur throughout the week. You look at, call it realistically between 3,000 and 4,000 an event easily. And if you make a check that week, obviously great, that's what you're there to do. But you have to pay your caddy a percentage. An argument that I make for why the PGA Tour should financially support guys through the Korn Ferry Tour more,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, is that, and even honestly, the top of the developmental tours, I think, should get paid a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
because there's the top of the developmental tours who are still in the top 500 of the world. Okay. Now think about that, right? Top 500 in the world. So if you're in the top 500 in the world in anything that you do in the world, okay, anything in life, any trade, obviously there's going to be a couple exceptions here or there, but especially a professional sport, call it top 500, top 400, top 300, you're doing really, really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm ranked somewhere around 230 to 250, depending on where it shook out the last few weeks. And,
Yeah.
230th to 250th in the world in any other professional sport, you're getting guaranteed money. You're getting checks for, millions of dollars every year.
It's interesting. These points, in this perspective is one that is, I think is really important for people to hear. And it's a topic I know that's out there for professional golfers, the PGA Tour, Korn Ferry Tour. And they had the meeting up in Vermont, right? Tiger flies in, and no one knows exactly what they were talking about. But I've been hearing some things that are coming to the surface is this kind of guarantee, right? That you can't make under this. And maybe that discussion is just for the PGA Tour. And I heard the number like 500,000, like that's the minimum. Do you think it's fair? Like, you think that it's important? Look, if you are, let's just say the Korn Ferry Tour, if you are a Korn Ferry Tour member, like you're guaranteed this, right? Now you're still going to play, and if you miss a cut, then you don't get paid, and hopefully you'll exceed that. But there's a minimum that you're going to make, right? That you're going to make if you play X amount of events. You think that's a little more guarantee? Because that's the word, right? LIV, which I'll ask you about here in a second, has exploded the door open on this guaranteed money, right? And there is no guarantee for professional golfers up to this point. You show up, if you make the cut, you get paid. If you don't, then you don't make anything, and you still have all these same expenses, right? So do you think that the sport in general, the tour, Korn Ferry Tour, needs to go in a direction where it's like, look, there should be some kind of guarantee. We're professional golfer, at least, like, we're out here, we're at least entertaining on Thursday and Friday, right? We're part of the entertainment, at least for a couple of days. Now I get it. I don't make the cut. I don't get that pay, but there's got to be a minimum to at least support us to that degree. Do you agree with, do you like that?
See, again, professional golf has been professional golf. It's been done like this for forever. It's history. It's, listen, it's why I love the game.
Yeah.
Okay. But in the same breath, I've dealt with realizing how difficult it is to get to the top stage and go out there and also succeed. There's guys that are on the PGA Tour every year. So this is the top of the top level. You made it, right? You
Yep.
made it to where you dreamed of being your entire childhood growing up, and you go out there, and whether let's say you battle through some injuries, your swing kind of just goes into a little slump, say
Yep.
you have some putting woes, whatever the case may be, right? It happens every single year to some guys.
Oh yeah.
And they finish 200th on the list, 205th on the list, and they are literally down money for the year.
Wow. Yeah. That's an eye opener there, right? I mean, that's an important discussion that I think needs to be had, and I hope that it goes that way. and that there is a little more support and guarantee, at least on the PGA Tour, and I would at least think on the Korn Ferry Tour, because the level of play that's coming from the Korn Ferry Tour, I mean, obviously the importance of what's happening there is huge. I mean, there's so many players that have that have played and have learned and have cut their teeth and have built confidence and self-belief on that tour, refining the skills, and then going to the PGA Tour and becoming a star. Will Zalatoris right now, #1 in the FedEx.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think there's a very, very happy medium between what I just said, kind of figuring out a structure where everybody who deserves to be and has earned that privilege to be paid, whether it's upfront, but there has to be some guarantee, okay, no matter what, in professional golf, that needs to come to the light soon, okay? And there has to be some happy medium between that and still making sure our top players are taken care of to the highest degree, which obviously increases in prize money and stuff like that, I feel like is going to do most of it. But also the PGA Tour, I know, is looking at creating different streams of revenue to make sure that we have, a bigger pie, basically.
Yeah.
So that we can, afford to do all this. Obviously, everybody knows about the reserve now and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's you can't compete with the Saudi investment fund. You can't.
No.
It's impossible. I heard an unbelievable stat. Someone told me, I think it was actually at the U.S. Open, someone told me this, because right before they went over to London, something came out that the Saudi investment fund, okay, had spent 0.01 of what they have on LIV so far, and they spent north of $1 billion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's psychotic.
You can't compete with that. I mean, that's a business model that you can't compete with, and there is no, they say there's a business model, and I know they're going to try to sell these franchises and this and that, but I mean, guaranteeing that kind of money is crazy. So, just on those lines, I mean, this, whatever side people fall on, I try to keep this pretty neutral here on the podcast, and I've had both perspectives on the podcast over the last couple months. I mean, I had Brian Urlacher on, the Hall of Fame linebacker who I know, and he's drilling a hole in me on Friday and how great LIV is, and this and that. And, he brings up some valid points. And then, obviously then you got the other side of it. And, so there's that's a whole nother discussion, right? Getting into to the depth of that. But the reality is LIV has come out, and a competitor, it's made the PGA Tour think differently. And I think above all that, the player has gained so much more leverage, Brandon. I mean, you couldn't be probably coming into professional golf right now at a better time, because you've got so much leverage as a player. So here's LIV. I mean, maybe they send you a text, "Hey, Brandon, we're interested. You can take that call."
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, honestly.
Yeah.
For me, I'm a little different. Where I grew up, the way I kind of got to where I am now, I was never really given anything. I've been fortunate enough to meet some great people along the way who have helped me get to where I am, because like what we talked about before, it's impossible really to do this without sponsors.
Yeah.
Starting out, unless you have family money, or you sign a big old contract out of college and you have immediate success and just go. But starting out and kind of in the middle there, where I fell from Korn Ferry back to Latin and had to get back from Latin to Korn Ferry, I had to have a little bit of help there. And I've had some great people around me along the way, but I've never really been given anything. So I've worked my ass off. And I love golf, so it doesn't seem like work to me. I've been very fortunate that I kind of fell in love with this game in every aspect, and I'm a little bit of a sicko with it. You know, there's a lot of guys, I'm sure you know, that, you know, kind of look at it as a job and kind of drag their head down. You see them walking around I'm not like that. When I go home and take time off, my fiance has to literally like almost hide my clubs in order for me to not play golf. And, you know, she'll yell at me once in a while. It's funny, but I mean, I worked really hard to get to this point, and to take away the slight desire, maybe, if that's the right word, to get better because of, you know, the complacency that comes with guaranteed money to that degree, is something that I'm not the biggest fan of. But in the same breath, with all that being said,
You're going to listen.
I do come from where I come from.
Yeah.
You know, my family doesn't have money. You know, I can take care of my children, my grandchildren. I can figure out a way to make sure that my entire fiance's family is okay. All my friends, like I can take care of people and not worry about it and live the life that, no pun intended, live the life that I want.
Yeah.
Throughout, you know, I mean, it just, there's so many avenues that you can talk about with this whole thing, but realistically, that, in my opinion, is the only way where, if you're in a position to realistically gain generational wealth that you do not already have and take care of X amount of people, I mean, I feel like you can't be really knocked for that. And honestly, even like, you know, call it Brooks, honestly. I mean, this is people, you know, obviously there's certain people that feel certain ways about Brooks, but I mean, Brooks and Chase are out there. I can't imagine there wasn't something to do with his brother for his decision to do that. And, you know, I think talking about family and taking care of your family and doing all that is a great thing. So people that are really knocking on the LIV Tour and kind of dogging on them a bunch over the past few months and year or whatever, you know, you can dog on the LIV Tour, but don't dog on the individuals that you don't know what position that they're in. They're just going for more money, and at the end of the day, we're independent contractors. I think it's okay to go after the industries, but the individuals, you know, they're making their own decisions. I understand that, you know, obviously there's a lot that comes with it from, you know, the background of Saudi and so on and so forth, but, you know, there's certain situations where you got to put your family and financials in that sense ahead of that.
Yeah, no, I've never dogged, and look, I've taken a beating on the podcast on some of the questions and, you know, flags that I've raised about LIV, and not thinking that business model perhaps is exactly what in the end professional golf needs. And I almost feel like at this point they're becoming more of just a disruptor than actually a real business model that they want to sustain and work with the PGA Tour on. But at the same time, look, if someone offers you that kind of money and you go, I mean, that's good for you. You know, now going and coming back and suing and trying to get your way back in and having your cake and eat it too is a whole nother discussion. But let's talk a little bit about your game here as we wrap the podcast. But you know, you're kind of a late bloomer, right? I mean, you're 28, and you know, you went to Temple and you've kind of worked your way up, and then you had to go back down to Latin America. Now you're back up to Corn Fraser. Now here you are, right? Coming onto the PGA Tour at the 28th. You made the cut at the US Open this year. And tell people about your game. You know, you're a long hitter, Brandon. It says 319 yards on average right now, but I know that's like cruising speed for you. I have a feeling that 319 is just your fairway finder.
The 319 is very skewed, so that's the Corn Ferry driving distance.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah. So they measure 2 holes every round that go in opposite directions, and a lot of the holes that they pick throughout the year, I'm hitting 3-iron on. So
okay, so there you go, folks. Give us your assessment of your game right now, your strengths, the things that you've been working on, where your improvements you feel like you've made that have helped propel you now to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked really hard on my short game, putting, and just control of my golf ball. With my different coaches that I have, Brian Simmons with my short game has been incredibly instrumental to my success over the past few years. Dale Gray's worked on my swing with me for God, 3 years now. That's crazy. So over the past 3 years, we've gotten my swing more efficient. So it's gotten more consistent. And then I started working with Todd Sones a little bit on my putting. And I started working with Todd in Chicago. And I believe I was like somewhere around 130th or so in putting. And I think I'm up to high 50s now. Yeah. So, that's a big change from, whatever that is, 9-10 events into the season to now. And those are the kind of small things that, for me are incredibly important. Just straight up efficiency, right? Getting more consistent, because, I've always had speed. I've been fortunate enough to have that, but realizing, for me to dial it back is so hard. Yeah. Because the only way I've grown up is just to hit everything hard. Baseball, I was a home run hitter. I tried to just absolutely, mutilate everything that came to the plate. And golf, my dad sat me on a tee when I was 5 years old and said, hit it over this pond. So I just tried to hit it as hard as I can over a pond. And then he moved me back a tee when I hit it over the pond. So that's how I grew up. So for me, it's been difficult, but a great challenge. And I think, honestly, we're getting to a point right now where we're figuring out a few really great things in order to keep it consistent, hit a lot more fairways, and still maintain a lot of that distance. Maybe give up a little, but maintain a lot of it.
What is your cruising speed? Are you like 126, you think?
Miles per hour? I mean, tournament wise, I just cut down my driver to 43.5 inches. So I haven't done enough work with it to kind of really understand the exact numbers on it yet. So, normally before I did that, my cruising speed on course would be 27, 28. Sometimes get up to 30 if I have, open par 5, downwind par 5 kind of situation, trying to hit it over a creek, whatever it is. Carry would be, fairway finder with my old driver. I'd be carrying somewhere around 330. And then, if I would hit one hard, I can get it up to 340 to 360 carrying it.
Ferry. Wow. So you're longer than Bryson.
We'll see if he wants to admit.
What's it like cracking a face of a driver? Like how many of you cracked? Put a number on how many faces you've cracked in the last 2 years.
So usually a month and a half ish to 2 months out of a driver, I would say, if I'm, really practicing hitting balls, whatever. In 2018, I went through 16 driver heads.
Jeez.
So that was a little frustrating because, at the end of the day, no matter how great you are at building a club, you can be the best club builder in the world. To get the exact weight and exact weight distribution in the head for it to feel the same, and then that to match up with the shaft to exactly get the same feel off the face. And there's so many things that go into one particular driver that it's so hard to match up exactly. I mean, they'll get it close, but to get it exact is so difficult, and that's why, it does get a little frustrating sometimes when drivers start caving in and cracking because the consistency is just hard to match.
Yeah, I'm sure you got to travel with like 3 or 4 of them, right? That
Always a backup.
I bet. Well, look, let that dog hunt, right? Let that driver hunt. That'll bode well. A little fade, I would imagine. Fairway finder out there about 330. Get it in play. I mean, you see the trends on the PGA Tour. Solid iron game, man. You have length and a solid iron game. You're gonna keep your card forever because you're gonna have your putting weeks, right? I mean, you're gonna have your good putting weeks, but man, if you're just giving yourself ample opportunities all the time and you're in that top third of strokes gain approach, watch out, especially with your length. I mean, you're gonna blitz it. So, congratulations, man! It's cool to see things going your way in professional golf, and I understand you're getting married in September too. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm believe me, that's the thing I'm most lucky about. Let's see if she keeps me for that long.
Well, mine's kept me for 13 years now. So I don't know. When you find the right one though, right? Like when you find the right one, you got to put
100%.
Congratulations, man. Thanks for joining us and good luck this week in Idaho.
Thanks, Trav. Appreciate it.